Welcome folks to another Unreal tutorial. In this tutorial we're going to be looking at how to generate wind. So as you can see here, I've created a little scene. We are going to dip into Quixel Mixer a little bit. I'm intending to kind of do some more tutorials with Quixel Mixer. For those who don't know, it's now become part of Unreal Engine, and you can download a lot of the materials that they've created, and I think even some assets too. So it's definitely a very valuable thing. I think certainly, you know, for people who are interested in, I guess, in getting into level design, but even just for anyone who's just wants to kind of put a scene together, and obviously people who are doing coding as well, it'll be good for them in terms of being able to, you know, just concentrate more on the doing the C and C sharp and all that, but just generally good for design all round. So we're going to touch on that, and we are also going to get into the materials editor, and we're going to have a look at creating a simple grass wind and applying things like wind intensity and wind weight, plugging that into our material, and then watching the magic happen. So you can see here, little scene, actually created from everything really from within Unreal. So this slab here, which is acting as the kind of the platform, that's just a simple cube squashed. The material was created in Quixel Mixer. Foliage was the standard foliage that you get in Unreal Engine, including the rocks as well. So it's just all repeated. But anyway, without further ado, let's get to it. So I'm going to put the video on pause now. I'm assuming most of you watching this video knows how to navigate your way around Unreal Engine. If not, you can certainly look at my previous videos, but there are a plethora of videos online that you can look at going into Unreal Engine. So certainly, you know, watch that before you get into this. But yeah, I'm going to start a new video. I'm going to start a new project, sorry, where I'm going to create a third-person level, and then we'll get cracking. So I'm going to put the video on pause now, and I'll see you in the next part. Okay, so we've got another project open, third person, and you can see here we've got our scene. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go to Basic, and I'm going to drag in a cube. So this could be something, you know, that you've made either in Maya, Blender, 3ds Max. Doesn't matter. It's just a simple cube. I'm just using this as a kind of platform, really, or plinth. Okay. So that's going to be our little diorama. Just have a quick look at that. Big enough. Okay, so that's all good. Right, and next we're going to put some items on there. So this is where we go to start content, and we want to be looking at props. And within props, you should have some foliage. Certainly got rocks. Drag those in to start off with. And basically, for that scene that I played previously, it's just the same rock. Just repeat it all over again. Once you've got a rock in there, just use Alt and just change it around. Sometimes it's good to look at reference as well. I mean, this is just really an exercise, but in terms of creating a little scene, yeah, you might want to get some reference, and obviously things like concept art and things like that. So I'm just going to quickly, I don't want to spend too much time on this. That's better. Just move some of this around. So okay, just something like that. If you want to add some other little rocks, you know, you can take this again and reduce it down. So you've got some smaller kind of bits here which you can dart around here, there, and everywhere. Might just kind of reduce the size, the overall size of that. Okay, so something like that. And then the foliage. Yeah, there we go. So we've got this here. It's called SM Bush. And then I did use the same bush to create the scene. So I think what we'll do here is we'll get the first part done. So for those who are just kind of looking at wanting to kind of create wind, I'll front load this and I'll kind of put this as the first part of the video. The Quixel Mixer, it'll just be the finish. Yep. So how do we get wind onto this? Right, so if I go to with SM_bush selected, we want to look on the right hand side here and go to where it says materials. You can see there it's the textures there. So we double click on that. And it brings up the materials editor for the bush. Nice and simple. So we've basically got what looks to be normal, and just basic texture. Okay, so where do we go from here? We need to go into the right hand side, and in the categories you need to type in simple grass wind. Well, actually, you don't even need to type it out, it's right there at the bottom, but it's simple grass wind. Click and hold with left mouse button, drag it over into our editor. Okay, all good. Next, we need to hold down S and click the left mouse button. Whoops, overzealous there. And same again, S and click. Okay, so these are our parameters, which will, and we're going to rename these. So I'm going to, the top one, we're going to rename this wind intensity. Just zoom in a little bit so you can see it. There we go. wind intensity, and the one below is going to be wind weight. All good so far? Excellent. And what we're going to do is we're going to connect up wind weight to wind weight and wind intensity to wind intensity. Cool. Now, the next part. So next we need to connect up the result to world position offset. You'll get an error, don't worry about that. And then where it says additional WPO, you need to click on that and connect that through to the RGB. That should disappear like so. So we're almost all set. The next part is we need to click on wind intensity, and with this one we just need to, now again you can be the sort of judge of this. Now at the moment we can see on the left it's fairly static. We need to increase the numbers on this and decrease the numbers on this. Okay, so increase, decrease. So with wind intensity, just going to increase the value on that, increase the value on the slider minimum, increase the value on slider max. So it's default value, slider min, slider max. You need to increase. Okay, but still no change, right? And that's because we need to create a minus for these. So for the default value and the slider minimum and slider max, we then take those into a negative. And we should, by right, start to see some movement. Let's have a look. There we are, moving very nicely. Okay, might be a little bit too much, so we might just adjust some of these settings, take them back up to, let's have a look at that. So that, you know, you basically just need to have a bit of a play around, really. That's a bit too little, so let's take that down again. It just needs to be subtle. What I'm kind of aiming for is a kind of like a sort of gentle breeze. You don't want it to be like sort of, you know, like a gale or hurricane, right? Yeah, something like that. Go with something like that. Just one more tweak. That'll do. Yep. Click apply. Save. Close that down, and hopefully there we go. So let's just have a little play, just see what that looks like. It's going to hit F11, and let's go and have a look at our little scene. So let's jump on that. So nice. It's got some very nice movement on that there. So all we'd need to do from here in terms of, like, you know, with the foliage is basically take that, select that, and hold down Alt, and you can start playing around with sizes. And of course, if you want to add some grass in here, then by all means. Now, as far as I'm aware, there's no generic grass with this, but you can go into Unreal Marketplace, and there's a ton of free foliage that you can download. It's all there, so there's certainly no shortage. I am going to do I've done a video before, but I'm going to do another video looking at creating grass by using planes and also playing around with like alpha channels in Photoshop. I'm going to get into that again, and how we apply wind to that as well. So that will be for things like grass and the likes. But anyway, as far as this is concerned, I think we're pretty much about there. You know, we can sort of continue going on with this, but that will do for now. So that's the first part, really, of this video tutorial. In the second part, we're going to be concentrating on putting in our texture from Quixel Mixer, putting in a bit of lighting, creating our scene, and then we will finish. So I'll see you in the next part of the video. Bye for now. Okay, welcome back, folks, to the second part of this video, where we are going to be exploring Quixel Mixer and then how to apply our textures to our model in Unreal Engine. So if you don't have Quixel Mixer installed on your computer, you probably need to put this on pause, go through to Quixel's website, download that. You'll also need to download their free textures which they have. I can't remember the exact amount, but you should at least be able to get, straight off the bat, at least say 50. But I think there's something like, if I'm just working from memory now, it's something like 7 gigs worth of textures that you can pick up. But you will need that. Also, you will need Quixel Bridge, but we don't need that necessarily for this for today. It's just Quixel Mixer, and then we're going to export the files into a folder and then import them into Unreal Engine and apply them to our little kind of raised platform. Anyway, without further ado, this is a piece of ground that I created prior to doing this video. So you can see here I've got this kind of like almost like muddy stone, kind of muddy texture. It's got some puddles in there as well, and yeah, so it's quite a cool program. It's relatively simple to use. I mean, it's a fairly simple interface, but it is a little bit convoluted in terms of the settings and playing around with. But anyway, let's dive straight into it. I'm going to go to File, I'm going to go to New Mix. I'm going to call this, say, Ground 2. Do you want to save your changes? I'm not interested in saving the changes, so I'll go no. And then it'll basically give us a sort of blank canvas, so to speak. Now, before we start manipulating it, we want to start loading in our layers. So first of all, it doesn't really matter because we can rearrange them, but I'm going to put noise in there. I'm going to put a texture in there. So for this, we've got ground, something like, say, bark soil. Okay, got that in there. And paint, which you'll find here. And then lastly, we're going to put liquid in there as well. Alright, so we'll need to raise up the liquid, the threshold of it, so it's kind of above those layers there, or at least above them all. But then above that layer, we'll need our bark soil, so I'm going to raise the threshold of that just so it's above, like so. Now the paint layer, as you can see, is there. That's all there, that's okay, and then we've got the liquid layer. Okay, so it's a little bit odd because it's like the first thing we're seeing is actually the bark soil, but we need it to be in this in this kind of configuration. But essentially, what we're going to do is we're going to go into the paint layer and we're going to start creating puddles. But so make sure that you got all your layers in order, like so, before we go any further. So if you've managed to do that, that's good. Let's now go into the paint layer, and this is where we're going to start having some fun and creating puddles. Now, it's a little bit counterintuitive because essentially the brush in this respect takes away and the eraser actually adds. Yep, I know it doesn't quite make sense with this kind of configuration, but that's let's just go with it. So with this, I'm going to select the brush, and in terms of, we want to make some broad brush strokes initially, so I'm going to go onto this little soft brush here, zoom in a little bit, like so. I'm going to increase the brush size, and then start painting away. Like so. Now, I can see a little bit of the grey coming through there, so I might just go through to our bark soil and just increase the size of that a little bit. Ditto with the liquid to raise that up a little bit as well. It's not the end of the world, but I just wanted to make sure that that's looking okay. Alright, that's good. And then what I'm going to do here is just start plotting in where I want the puddles to kind of go. Now I don't want to go too overboard, so something like that's fine. I'd probably avoid going to the edges, because when it comes to it, when you like, say for example you wanted to tile it, you want to make sure that you're not going to the edge, because that's going to potentially cause some issues. Anyway, take it off that, go back to that. And so once you've kind of done the broad brush strokes, then we can sort of maybe go to some of these other brushes here where it's a bit more fragmented, and we can start filling in something like that. There we go, and just start kind of painting in, making it look a little bit more organic. And again, try out some of the brushes. Don't just sort of stick with one brush. Let's see what else we've got. It's quite cool. And you know, just pull out a little bit, just have a look and see what it's looking like. And again, just experiment really. If you want to, you can get some reference looking at stuff from the from the real world. That's always a good thing as well. Instead of working from imagination, you can do that. And you could also play around with opacity as well. So that's the strength of the brush. So, say for example, turn that down a bit more, just so it's not so strong, and even the flow, so take the flow down, so when you're making these strokes it's a bit more sort of staggered, and it's not, you're getting little bits of it's not getting rid of all of the ground. That's looking right. And then if you want to add into it, there you can go to the eraser and then start painting back into it again. Yeah. So you've got these little islands of ground. But again, use your own judgment. But yeah, try and avoid anything that kind of looks. You want it to kind of look as organic as possible, but again, I wouldn't, fuss too much. I think the more, if you overthink it, it's going to start looking a little bit fake. So you just want to, just have a bit of a play around. Okay, so unfortunately folks, the computer crashed in the middle of all that. I haven't got the best computer in the world, so I've had to just restart the project, and I've just started kind of playing around with this. So just carrying on from where we were before, it's going to go into the paint layer and have a look at these brushes. So as I mentioned before, you want to have a play and just start messing around with some of this, and also some of the other brushes, like the eraser brush, just to create some little patches. So this is kind of where I got to before the computer crashed. So just something like this, but you don't want to spend too much time. I mean, it is possible to kind of overthink this and over-design it. By all means, put a bit of time into it, play around, but at the same time, this is a tutorial. So, okay, so that's kind of looking okay. So if you manage to do that, folks, that's great. So you should have a piece of ground that looks like that. There are a few other bells and whistles in this, which we could perhaps play around with in another video. Things like noise, can sort of play around with some of the texture, but we'll come to that in another video. But for the meantime, this is all looking good, and we're ready for the next stage, which is to export. Now, if you're happy with what you've done, you want to go over to where it says export. Now, we've got a name for it. I've called mine ground 2. The location, you want to create a folder, so you want to go click on that there, go through to the desktop, and I'm just going to create another folder, call this ground 2, enter, select that folder. So now we've got that there, and then when we go through to file, we can just go quick export, and it'll export it. Oh yeah, forgot to mention as well, on here you don't necessarily need to worry about this. This is 2048. You can play around with some of the formats here. Now, generally speaking, it should be a Targa file. It was left at custom, but yeah, Targa file is where you need to have it set. But also, you'll have all your maps on here. So you've got albedo, got gloss, roughness, normal, displacement, and ambient occlusion, metalness. We'll attach hopefully most of those to our materials editor when we get into Unreal. Anyway, so yeah, so we've got that. Go through to file and then quick export. Basically, it'll export all the files. After it's done it, I probably should shut this down because I think my computer's going to struggle with using Unreal and this at the same time. So I'm assuming it's exported them all. I'm going to hit on the X. We'll save those changes. I'll call it ground 2, save. And then I'm just going to bring back Unreal Engine, go to content. So go to start content, and on here I'm going to go to import and find our folder ground 2, which is there. Open that, click on that, and then we've got all of our files in here. It's all looking good. Open those. Okay, that's all looking good. Okay, that's fine. And then I'll just need to create a material. So I'm going to go right click, material, and we'll call this, unsurprisingly, ground, and double click to open this up. Okay, and all we need to do is we just need to drag our textures in there. So we've got albedo, so we'll drag that in there, connect that up to the base color. Let's try that again. ambient occlusion. I'll drag that in and connect that up to ambient occlusion to zoom out. Displacement, I'll leave that because I'm not sure if I've actually got that in view. I know there's like world displacement, but we'll leave that out for the time being. Normals, drag that in there and connect that up to the normal. Should start to see it taking shape now. So if we look on the this little kind of sphere. Now the thing that we're missing is the roughness. Click and hold, drag that in there as well. And this is where it should start to come to life. So then click on that, drag that into roughness. There, excellent. That's looking something like. I think we're almost about ready to go. So with all that in mind, again you can kind of straighten these up. So, but yeah, that's looking alright. So apart from our displacement, that's all looking tickety-boo. Apply that and save. And once that's done, click on that box and the moment of truth. So we should see that icon's changed now. Okay, hold your breath folks, here we go. Click and hold, drag and drop. Voila, there we are. Pretty cool, huh? Just click on that there. It's going to hit F11. And that's not looking half bad. Now, of course, it's all a bit sort of stretched. You know, this block hasn't been UV'd, so you know it's going to look a bit awful on the side. But just for the purposes of doing our tutorial, yeah, pretty good. Yep. That's pretty much almost the same as it was in the Quixel Mixer. And just to finish, a couple of things like lighting. So we can maybe have a look at putting some lights in here. I've got a point light here. So, and just bump up the intensity a little bit. That attenuation as well, just so we've got a little more coverage. So looking all right, and then maybe just drop another light behind, just so you can kind of see the bushes. So something like that. All right, let's have a look. Go to play, hit F11. Now, if you want to kind of see, a bit more sort of dramatic effects, we can. This is just kind of like just to sort of finish off. But essentially, if you've done all that, folks, well done. You've got your texture in. You've done your wind, which is great. Lastly, if you wanted to just have a look and play around with lighting, I have done a video on this, looking at the sky. Is called Unreal Sky. If you wanted to just play around, say, make this completely dark so you got a bit more control over the light, you could certainly do that by playing around with some of this stuff. I'm going to click on the so I'm just going to do this very, very quickly. Something like that. So you can see there, the lighting's going to show up a little bit more now. and we can go into sky, and we can have a look at just adjusting a few of these things. Just take all the colours down. We don't need to be looking at the sky, so I'm just going to go through and just drag all these down. So overall colour, what we can do is we can go to build and build lights only, let it do its thing. Hey presto, it's done all the lights. So let's dip in now and just have a look at our scene. I'm going to hit F11. See that? I'll tell you what I'm going to do before that. I'm just going to drag another light in there just so I can light up my character. See where we're going now. What you can do here is if you want the light to go with the character, we can go to the world outliner. The light that we've got there, which is this one here, what we do is we click and hold, drag down, and we basically attach it to our third-person character. You see there, it's kind of like an indent. So now that light will travel with our character. So I'm going to hit play. There we are. So you can see our character there. F11. Presto. There we are. So we've got our ground, which we've made in Quixel Mixer to be precise. And we've got our rocks, and we've got our foliage with wind. So if you managed to get this far, folks, well done to you. That's definitely a step in the right direction in terms of being able to kind of create your environments and what you want to achieve. So that's really good. And that's about it. So if you've got any questions about any of this process, be sure to send me a message. And for anyone following this on YouTube, if you would kindly give it a like. If you like the video, subscribe if you're not subscribed before. Leave a comment, and I will always endeavour to get back to you and answer any questions that you've got. I'm also open to suggestions as well, so if anything you'd like to sort of see in these videos, whether it's anything to do with Unreal or any kind of modelling or anything to do with drawing, by all means drop me a line and let me know. And yeah, so I do take requests, so there we are. But that's it, folks. I hope you enjoyed the video, hope you find it useful, and that's it for now. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks a lot. Bye for now.